If you're a consultant and want to impress people with your slide deck, you're in the right place. Instead of using a normal RACI matrix, I will show you 10 alternatives that are more specific and look more professional. So before we dive into the 10 alternatives, let's have a quick refresher of the traditional RACI matrix, which is just a table like the one you see here. You have a list of tasks row by row and a list of people involved or stakeholders in columns. And at each intersection of a task with a person, you're going to put the role that person has for that specific task. So for example, this looks like a website design or creation project, and the first task is brainstorm design options, and we see that Amit, the first person involved, is going to be accountable, A, and also responsible, R, while Elsa is going to be just responsible, R. And if we go down, publish the website to the public, Amit is going to be consulted, C, Jane is going to be responsible, R, and Seth is going to be accountable, A. So the whole purpose of this is to make crystal clear to everyone who's going to do what and at which phase of the project. All the alternatives that we are going to see today still follow the same structure. They still have tasks in rows, they still have stakeholders in columns. The only thing that is changing are the roles that we use. So let's just have another refresher on the roles of the traditional RACI matrix. In a traditional RACI matrix, RACI stands for responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. Responsible is the person who materially does the work, and accountable is the person who will take the blame in case things go wrong. Most of the time they will be the same person, but not necessarily. For example, if you have a company and you have a facility department that needs to fix the plumbing of the building and they hire a contractor, the contractor will be responsible, but the facility department who hired the contractor is actually accountable. They own fixing the plumbing and they own the decision of outsourcing this to a contractor, so they are ultimately in charge for this. Consulted is someone who is asked for information, asked for opinion on a task, but only that. He really has no way to influence or stop or change how an activity is being done. It's just being consulted and asked information. There is an exchange. The person responsible will go to the consulted person, ask question, get feedback, but ultimately the responsible person will decide. Informed instead is just a push communication. So the responsible or accountable will keep that person informed. They will tell you, hey, things are doing great, we have this problem, whatever, but they will just push the information and will not be open to feedback. They might be, but there is no expectation. So if you are informed, it really means you get information about the project, but nothing you can do about it. These four roles are pretty standard. They work well in most cases, but they are not specific. They are generic. So if you have a design project, important decision to make, those roles does not really capture what people have to do in that project. So this is why I'm here to present you 10 alternatives that, depending on your case, are going to be much better than this traditional RACI matrix. The first one is RACI Q. Here we have the same roles as the RACI matrix, but we add one more role, quality review. So this is really important if you are concerned about the quality of your deliverable. So once you create something, like once you create the website, you want to ensure that everything is really how it's supposed to be. So you want to have someone who actually checks everything before delivering it to the customer. And that's the quality review role, or Q. Another variant of this is RACI VS, where here we have two quality related roles, which are verification and sign off. Verification is kind of like the Q we saw before, is quality review or verifying that the deliverables, so what we create with our project, is fit for purpose, is exactly what we meant it to be. But then we have someone else who is in charge of signing off, so accepting okay, this is verified, this is good, and we can deliver it to the customer. Here we have kind of a similar situation as responsible and accountable. You have someone who is actually doing the verification materially, and someone else who is in charge to say, okay, the verification has been done. Here, unlike responsible and accountable, you don't want to have the same person do both. You want to have someone do the verification and someone else do the sign-off. If you don't have this split, then it's better to just move back to RACI Q, which is simple. Another variant of the RACI matrix is the RACI O, where we add one more role about information. out of the loop. This role is just about saying someone, you're not going to be consulted, you are not going to be informed even, you're just out of the loop for this task. This is really a great way to communicate clear expectation, especially when you have large project with many different phases and you want to say, this part does not really involve you, do not expect any communication, we are gonna do this without you. If you are afraid that people may resent if you are not sending them communication, this is the method you should use. At the beginning of the project, you show everyone you're gonna be informed or consulted for this task, but you're gonna be out of the loop for these other tasks. So if people have some concern, they will have to raise them during the kickoff meeting of the project. And if they don't, then later it will be really hard for them to justify, oh, but I didn't get this communication. Keep in mind this RACI matrix in case you have really nasty stakeholders. Another little variant of RACI matrix is the RACI matrix, where we add one more role. Here we add it in the middle, and it's the support role. Here we want to be specific about someone who will be doing work materially but will not be responsible. It will be on a co-pilot seat, I would say, with the responsible. So the responsible will still be in charge of doing the work but will rely on some material support from someone else. Support role can provide the resources in terms of money, funding, equipment, infrastructure, people, time, whatever. It provides some form of support to the responsible. And is different from the consulted role, because consulted is about providing consultation, providing information, providing knowledge. Support is about providing material support, helping someone do the job. The accountable still owns the goal and is typically in charge of coordinating both the responsible and the support role. A little variant of this is the RACI. Here is a little bit tricky because we are changing the meaning of the roles. So you see we have a responsible, authority, task, support, and informed. Responsible is not the responsible we are used to for the traditional RACI matrix, but it's actually the accountable. So it's the person that owns the outcome. Authority instead is typically the customer or the sponsor, the ultimate external decision maker that will be the authority to accept, okay, this is actually what I wanted. Task is the person who is doing the task, so the real responsible from the traditional RACI matrix. Support is still here to provide skills, knowledge, material support, equipment, resources, is helping the task guy do the job. Informed does not change, is someone who just gets information about the project but has no way to influence it. The idea of using this matrix as opposed to a traditional RACI matrix is where you have your customer involved into the project. So if the customer is inside the project, is signing off each deliverable, you may want to use this. However, I would advise not using that because you are mixing up responsible and accountable. People tend to be used to the traditional RACI matrix, and if they see a error, they expect a responsible and they expect the person doing the job. If they see an A, they expect accountable, the person owning the outcome inside the company. So this may be a little bit harder to digest for most people. ARPA is another variant of a RACI matrix that introduces one new role, the advisor. It simplifies a little bit the other roles, so we have the accountable, which is still the person owning the ultimate outcome and taking the blame, the responsible, the person doing the job, and the participant, which is someone who is either supporting or consulting. So he's providing either effort, skill, or material support, or he may be just providing consultation to the responsible and accountable. And then we have an advisor, which is not really like a consulted one. We may come to the advisor if we need help, but not necessarily so. With a consulted role, there is an expectation that we are going to consult that person. With an advisor, it means this person is knowledgeable, and if we feel that we need some more help on this specific task, then we go ask the advisor, but not necessarily. So this can be a good way to mediate if someone really wants to be consulted, wants to be involved, but you don't really feel it's the case. So you can give them this advisor role and say, okay, look, you are knowledgeable, we think we can do it ourselves, but if we feel it's too complicated and we don't know about this, we need your help, we come to you. Now let's move on to something that is specific for decision making. So if your project is about making an important decision, then the rapid framework is what you may need. Here we change completely the role. We don't have responsible, accountable, we have the recommendation, the person who makes recommendation, proposal and provides idea. Then we have established agreement. So one who is in charge of bridging the gap between different stakeholders and ensuring that we come to some form of consensus or at least agreement on what we're gonna decide. Perform and execute is the person that will actually execute once the decision is made. So we decide to build a new skyscraper, whatever, this person, this team will be in charge of delivering that. Provide input is someone who does not really make recommendation. Recommendations are about we should decide that, we should build a skyscraper in New York rather than in Toronto or whatever. It just provides input. Raw data information like the price per square meter in New York is higher than the price per square meter or square feet in Toronto. It's easier to get building permissions in Toronto than it is in New York. It just provides raw information without any recommendation. And finally we have the decision maker, decide role, who is the person who eventually will say, okay, I agree, this is what we're gonna do. Another variant of the RACI matrix is the PAXI. Here again, we use different roles: perform, accountable, control, suggest, and informed. Responsible and accountable are the same as in the traditional RACI matrix, but on top of these, we have the control role. Control is someone who can veto a decision, or it can say the outcome that we get is not what I wanted for. It can send everyone back to the drawing board and restart the work for a given task. So if you have someone who has veto power, then that's the way to go. And then we also have an informed role. It remains as is in the RACI matrix. It's just to receive information. And suggest, which is kind of like consulted but more of unsolicited consultation. So he can come in and say, I will do this differently, but there is no guarantee that the people that are responsible will listen to him. Another one that we can use for decision matrix is the DCI, which is much more simpler. We only have 3 roles. The decision maker is the one in charge of making the decision. Then the consulted is someone who is consulted, is asked for information, it provides feedback, but all his feedback is non-binding. So there is no guarantee that if you are the consulted one, your input will be the one that is decided for. Decision maker is the one making the decision in the end. It says in the name. Consulted is someone who provides input, provides recommendation, but everything that he provides is non-binding. So the decision maker can listen to the consulted if he wants to, but not necessarily so. And finally, informed is someone who is informed about the outcome of the decision but is not involved in the decision process. Another one, still for decision making, is the DACI. Driver, we have someone who is driving an idea. So there is something that we want, some idea, some accomplishment that we want to get, and the driver is the one in charge of pushing that forward. Then we have the approver who say, okay, this is what we're gonna do. This is the one approving what the driver is driving. So the driver will need to get the consensus from the approver. Then we have a contributor, which is a consulted role. He provides information, knowledge, but he may also provide support, resources. It enables the driver to drive the decision. And finally, informed, still the same. He receives information about the decision process, but he remains not involved into it. Okay, so I kept the best one for last, and this one matrix alternative will be the best for your very use case. How do I know? Because this is your custom matrix. Unlike everything that I showed you until now, which has a set of predefined role, here I'm suggesting you define your own role. You need to make a decision, add roles about the decision. You need to create a website, add roles specific to a website, design, implementation, code review. You need to create a building, add roles specific to your industry, to your project, to your context. This is the only way you can show what everyone has to do and be very specific about what you want them to do. I would suggest start with a normal RACI matrix and add roles to that. consider if maybe some roles are worth removing, maybe consultant is not needed in your industry, maybe there is nobody informed. But one thing I would avoid is twisting the roles. If you have a responsible role, because you need a responsible role, be sure that it means the same thing that it will mean in the traditional RACI matrix. So someone does the job. Why? Because people are used to the normal RACI matrix. This is the baseline they start off, and they don't want to unlearn the normal RACI matrix just for your project. So start with the basics and build on top of that. Hey guys, thanks for watching. This was the first video in project management. Be sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon to view more, but most importantly, go check our website in the description, because there you will see massive content that will help you in your career in project management, tech and consulting.